This week, Paul Fonenbaum said that Ryan Day should be fired if he loses to Michigan. In a conversation on Get Up, he said, quote, "I don't think he has to win the national championship, but here's what he doesn't need to do. If he loses to Michigan, which would be four in a row, and somehow gets bounced out of the playoffs, perhaps before the final game, I think the decision could be to get rid of him." Further reiterating his point at the end, saying that Ohio State has the most talented roster in all of college football, maybe aside from Georgia and Kirby Smart's squad there. And what Paul Fonenbaum said is very correct. You might say, well, are you sure about that? Look at his record since taking over in 2019. He's 56-8. But Ohio State, when you have the tradition, the resources, and the talent, just because you have a good record against bad teams doesn't mean that your job is safe. If you can't beat your rival and you can't win the big games, there's no point for you to be coaching that team. The first reason is the talent there. Since 2009, in the past 15 years, Ohio State has had a top 10 recruiting class every single year, except for 2010 when it was number 15. When you have all the talent in the world, I hope that you can beat the Indianas and the Wisconsins of the world. Those are teams that you should be expected to beat and you should easily beat without a worry. But the real point comes when you have a talented roster like that. Can you beat your rival? Can you win playoff games? Can you win the interesting non-conference games? And Ryan Day has yet to do that. If you take away every single Big Ten team, aside from Michigan, since 2019, his record against Michigan and non-conference opponents of stature like Oregon, Notre Dame, and playoff teams like Clemson, he has been 5-8. In 2019, he lost to Clemson and beat Michigan. In 2020, he beat Clemson in the playoffs and lost to Bama. In 2021, in the regular season, he lost to Oregon, lost to Michigan, and then beat Utah in 2021 in the bowl game. In 2022, he beat Notre Dame, but then lost to Georgia and lost to Michigan. And finally, last season, he barely squeaked by Notre Dame, and Ohio State lost to Missouri in the bowl game and lost to Michigan. So in those big non-conference games and Michigan, he's been miserable, 5-8. And when you coach a roster like that, you shouldn't just be beating all the other teams. You should be beating the good teams. I'm not saying that Ryan Day should go out there and be 13-0 in those games, but he should have a better record than 5-8 with the talented roster he has at Ohio State. On top of that, when it looks at accolades for Ohio State, having lost to Michigan, Ryan Day has not achieved very much with this Ohio State program. His last Big Ten championship was in 2020. The last time he beat Michigan was in 2019, and his last playoff game was in 2020. So in the past 3 seasons, it's been nothing but disappointments for Ohio State and Ryan Day. If Ryan Day does lose to Michigan this year and you're Ohio State, you have to fire him and move off of him, in my opinion, unless he were to go out there and win the national championship. That's the only thing that can save him. Because whether you have Jim Tressel, Urban Meyer, Ryan Day, those are the three coaches of the past 15 years, you're still going to get the top recruiting classes, and you're still going to be able to beat all the teams you're expected to beat. Penn State, Indiana, Wisconsin, so on and so forth. And one more added layer to this whole dynamic is that this Michigan team that Ohio State is playing is the worst one we've seen in a number of years. No disrespect to their players, but they lost their head coach in Jim Harbaugh. They lost their starting quarterback in J.J. McCarthy. They had 13 players get drafted. They lost Blake Corum. The point is, it's a good team. There's a reason why they're ranked in the top 10, but it's not stacked up to what it was last year. And in the past 3 years, this is the easiest team for them to beat because of the element of losing 13 players to the drafts of 13 starters, plus some transfers like Keon Sabb. Losing your head coach in Jim Harbaugh, not that Sharon Moore isn't good, but it's his first year coaching the program. And the game is at Ohio Stadium. It's in Ohio State this year. So if you can't beat Michigan, you should really be saying goodbye to Ryan Day if you're Ohio State. And one final thing to note, this isn't a totally perplexing situation for Ohio State to be in. They were in a similar situation with John Cooper in the late 90s. From 1995 to 1998, John Cooper was a great coach for Ohio State. He was going 11-1, 10-2, having success with the program. But what was the issue when he went 11-1? That loss was to Michigan, preventing them from going to the Big Ten championship and preventing them from going to the national championship. Point is, they've been in a situation where they had a coach with a great record, but couldn't beat the best teams. And what did they do? They moved off of him. And what happened? Ohio State benefited from it. They had success. Ryan Day, his job is not safe. If he can't beat Michigan this year, and if he were to lose to them and not win the national championship, Ohio State should move off him. because it won't impact their program negatively. They'll still get the best recruiting classes. They'll still have their pick of the top head coach, and all they can really do is move forward and up if Ryan Day does lose to Michigan by firing him. You guys let me know your thoughts. As always, thank you, and please subscribe.